Does this pedestal get in the way of being able to see my pants? Because they're fantastic. That's what I was told earlier. Thank you for coming, everybody. Yes, when we started working on this show, we wondered if there was a special event that we could do in conjunction with the show, and immediately I thought about a poetry reading. A lot of my work obviously is text-based, and as a writer, it's a really important part, not just the visual nature of the text, but also just the story behind it and the narrative itself. So when we started talking about a poetry reading, Hyde expressed interest in a special event, and I immediately thought of Alan and Karla, who are also here and will be reading after I do, and I'm super excited that they're here. But I'm going to read actually two of the pieces that are on the wall, because they're written to be read, and they're written to be read out loud. So I haven't read them out loud very much, so hopefully I do an okay job. But the show itself is about the narrative, so this reading is going to also be a lot about narrative. I generally write prose poetry, so bear with me, these aren't short. Little, like haikus. They're longer than that, but I'm going to read a couple of other prose poems and then the pieces on the wall. So I have to admit that I'm a little sister. That's relevant in a lot of my work, but it's relevant in this poem too. I have an older brother, and if you're a younger sibling, you know that older siblings are torturous. And if you're an older sibling, you know that you did that. So I'm also a mother, and when my daughter was 2 and she was still kind of crawling and she was on the floor a lot, so she was also exploring all of the things that were on the floor. She began to encounter bugs and things like that. So after watching her and having my own kind of angst about being a tortured younger sibling, this poem was born, and it's called Against Predation, and this is the one that's in the 2012 poetry calendar. So, against predation. Nothing about the defensive posture of a roly-poly says, I know how to have a good time. Its curled body barreling just beneath my daughter's pink fingers as she giggles and pinches with the twisting force of a toddler. A pursuit is laughable for the dominant one, but neither contender gives up easily. The invertebrate automatically circling the wagons of its body, folding in, segment upon segment, to protect the women and children of its soft, gray underbelly, while its nemesis doggedly grasps at empty wisps of air and concrete, then step and squat, then pinch, then pinch, then pinch, then roll, then roll, then roll. A pursuit is laughable for the dominant one, like when my brother used to wrestle me to the ground, hitting me in the face with my own hand until I folded in on myself, knees to chest, hands to nape, a dyed-in-the-wool defense against predation and tornadoes. Violent limbs flailing, slanted rain, swirls of white trash and refuse, the neighbor's mobile home, the neighbors. Nothing about the defensive posture of a little sister says, I love you too. My curled body crying just beneath the flintlock rifle of his knees, hip flexor locked and loaded, then flint spark, then fire, then fire, then fire, then roll, then roll, then roll. That's it. My brother wasn't that bad, but he did hit me a lot. This next poem, I don't know, did you guys know that we have a National Catfish Day, an actual national holiday dedicated to catfish? We do. It's June 25th, so we missed it. But in 1987, Ronald Reagan declared June 25th as National Catfish Day. And he said, more and more Americans are discovering a uniquely American food delicacy, farm-raised catfish. So that's how this poem begins. Where I'm from, where a few of us are from here in the room, we grew up on the river, so we got our catfish from the river. I don't know if it was a delicacy, but we kind of did things a little bit different. So it's interesting that farm-raised catfish is a delicacy, and I kind of remember catfish a little bit differently. So this poem was in Borderlands several years ago. It's called National Catfish Day. And this one's long, so bear with me. Okay. By simple diffusion, oxygen crosses the gill surface of a channel cat, naked, olivaceous, and impregnates cold blood with the warmness of a breath. Fresh water exploding on capillaries and discrete pathways flowing opposite one another, a counter-current exchange of respiration unique to the aquatic life of barbels and fin blades. Discovering catfish was like discovering dirt. Dirt dipped in cornmeal and deep fried in 2-day-old grease, rippling like hot springs and mud pies in a subterranean July. Dirt never tasted so good. Salted, dripping, crisp with hush puppies and a caught fresh daily commitment to immediacy and grace. Farm-raised catfish is a uniquely American food delicacy that doesn't make your fingers burn with the stench of lichens mixing in the neon oils of superbait. Breaded swai from Vietnam is easier on your wallet. Dredged in flour on the outside, trace amounts of heavy metal and large amounts of river bottom fill the inside of my American channel cat, my bare bones daily special, flayed on a red and white checkered tissue that can hardly soak up the trace amounts of grease, of fat, of silt sifted to the bottom. The river's mouth silted up with peat gravel and tires after the last good rain. My channel cat's mouth silted up with night crawlers before I angled him in, pink thumb crooking his jaw, serrated teeth perforating my skin, algae mingling brown with blood, green water moss foaming around my ankles, warming up the leg of my pants. Juvenile catfish have large heads. I carry a day's worth of sediment in my pocket, fingering the dregs as water breaks again across my toes. Okay, this next one is about snakes. Again, I'm a Texas poet. We're all Texas poets. I'm not trying to hide that. And even in the show, I talk about how I write about what I know. And part of my exhibition, that was that fear of getting beyond what I was comfortable with and beyond what I knew, because you write what you know, you photograph what you know. So one thing I know is venomous snakes. But this poem hasn't been published anywhere if anybody's interested in that. I'm just kidding. I don't know why. It's lovely. But this is my snake poem. I've got tornadoes in a minute, but this is my snake poem. It's called The Inferior Mirage of a Pit Viper. A diamondback rattlesnake looks like a mirage from a distance, one of those ephemeral ideas that hovers just above an overheated street and disappears as my car crests at an intersection on a hill. Its diamond-hard body absorbs the same heat as the blacktop I played basketball on as a kid when that Brock girl would push through me, elbows and knees, then call foul like a sissy. I would pluck loose asphalt from the palms of my hands and stand back up again, dig at the ground with the toe of my shoe, and try not to think about the sting of peroxide on freshly peeled skin. A diamondback rattlesnake hugs the pavement like fresh tar, black from a distance, then gases, then a rainbow as the light bends, then nothing. Wide open spaces can be deadly, the handbooks say, and yet it moves, fast as an inferior mirage, vanishing beneath the rubber of my tire, its diamonds hardly crushed, turned carbide, bruised. A diamondback rattlesnake is a generalist, the handbooks say. Behind me, a superior mirage lifts, wafts, spreads out like a vapor, the pink underbelly of a viper. I keep on driving and try not to think about the metabolic dissolution of tissue and blood and freshly peeled skin. My mom always told me that the only kind of good snake was a dead snake. So you're supposed to run over them with your car and then go back, forth. Yeah. I didn't, I just kept going. These next two pieces are pieces that are in the show, so these are probably a little more like short stories. The first one is about when I was trying to find cool Iowa. The show is called Between Here and Cool, and I drove from cool Texas to cool California to cool Iowa and home again. And sadly, cool Iowa wasn't there. I didn't know that going into it, that it wouldn't be there. But when I got there, it was just cornfields. So the only self-portrait on my trip is me in front of the cornfields at the intersection of what should be cool Iowa. And a lot of my trip was about letting go. letting go of expectations of what I thought would be there, like cool Iowa, which I thought would be there. So this short story is from the longer narrative of my trip, but this is the kind of vignette about hoping that cool Iowa is there, and then that process of letting go when it's not. And this is called True Story number 47.7. The sky turned steel blue and cold as I pushed into Iowa and beheld a new shade of green and acre after acre of sweet corn and soybeans. I abandoned photography altogether and focused on navigating back roads that were more like accidental lines on the map rather than actual paths to somewhere, to cool specifically, which at this point felt like it could be anywhere. Hours passed and streets narrowed, paved concrete turned to rocks and dirt and dugout holes and tractor trenches. Steel blue turned to an imperfect black, to night like a raging river. Rocks clawed at the plastic undercarriage of my car as I tried to cross a low spot at Sherman Street. For the second time, I was lost. The rain beat down on my windshield almost as heavy as the pain in my chest. There was no sign, no mention, no proof that cool existed, that what I had come all this way to find was something that could even be found. I pulled over and succumbed to every tear I had stored inside me for what seemed to be this very moment. But the rain didn't let up. I reached for the phone to call my mom in hopes that she could make anything better, calm my nerves, help me to breathe. No signal. I turned my phone off, waited the longest 4 minutes, and turned it on again. No signal. Setting out on this trip, I understood the potential for spiritual revival, for growth, for disappointment, for life metaphors, and here was everything in one agonizing thunderstorm. I clutched the steering wheel and prayed to God, promising to set aside all fear, to live a life of faith undaunted, to accept my own limitations, to trust. To start, I would dry my eyes and believe that every storm passes. I would put my car in drive and move on to the end of the six-toed cat, which was 47.7 miles away in Allerton. Carefully and with a palpable timidity, I inched forward. For 47.7 miles and hundreds of tears, I let cool Iowa go. I was really sad. It was really sad that cool Iowa wasn't there. It felt like that meant I couldn't go between here and cool. But then I realized that was just part of the story. The fact that I had driven 4,000 miles to find something that, in search of something that wasn't there. But that was part of the story. Just like the flat tire I get becomes part of the story, the speeding ticket becomes part of the story. There's also, I don't know how many of you have actually read the piece that's on the wall, but there were just moments on the trip where I realized I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to take advantage of whatever opportunities were there, even if I was terrified. And I can't show that I'm terrified. So I was in Cheyenne, and I had an app on my phone, the best road trip ever, and it would tell me random places to go. So I kind of went 15 minutes out of my way to what is called, it was Mel Gould's Open Air Art Gallery, or Berryville, like B-U-R-Y, Berryville. Not, I mean, I don't know where I'm from, we say it the same, but not like strawberries, but like bury me in the ground. Berryville, which I think is cute and clever, and of course I'm gonna go because everyone says to go. And I pull over, and it was just a bunch of yard art. And before I know it, here comes someone. So part of this next piece is about letting go of the fear or the appearance of fear and going ahead and realizing this is my story. I don't know what was gonna happen, but somehow this is my story. So this is about Mel Gould, and he's as innocent as can be. He's over there on the wall. And it's called True Story number 82009, Berryville. He had my grandfather's ears. I felt safe in his elderly presence and asked if I could take his picture. He agreed, but first a tour of his open-air gallery of kinetic mishmash and repurposed parts. In the spirit of goodwill, naivety, and fine art, imprudence, I agreed. Easing into the seat of a hybrid three-wheeled golf cart, I clutched the small handrail and shook my head in disbelief of my own daring. Around and back again, we took the long way home. His wife pushed open the farmhouse door to greet us. I adjusted the full metal weight of my Hasselblad in my hands, imagined it was substantial enough to be considered a blunt object, where police reports filed after my near death, trusted myself, and crossed over to the loose weave of their dining room carpet. Faux wood paneling covered every wall, floor to ceiling. I sidestepped the solid oak table and tried to keep my mental note-taking as inconspicuous as my fear of dying. He grabbed at the knob on a white painted door and pulled with unnecessary force. I understood that forward was the only way to go, as a billow of home cooking commingled with cat urine and burned at my eyes like onions. I know my onions. He flipped on the light and ushered me down a narrow flight of stairs, and then another, and then another. Beyond 2 more doors, a school bus, and a grain silo, a visitor's sign-in sheet awaited, and I wasn't wholly convinced this wasn't a record book of the dead. Their cold bodies packed into the concrete walls that held me on all sides. Saws, wrenches, vices, and other nondescript tools for cutting and slicing lay in greasy masses on a sawhorse table. He flipped another switch to trigger the lights and moving parts of Berryville, a strange tinkering of guitars behind a mesh screen that ran the full length of the dugout. He described every mechanism in painstaking detail. He couldn't stop smiling. I couldn't stop thinking about serial killers and criminal minds and how the evening news would explain, even more tragically, that I was a single mom. I couldn't stop thinking about how my car was parked on the side of the road, running. "This is fantastic," I assured him, sweaty feet swimming in my shoes. "Thank you so much for bringing me down here." I glanced at the doorway and gave him the signal to release me. We backtracked into the basement proper where his wife worked at the washing machine. He offered me a ride up to the main floor in an elevator made from a repurposed school locker. I took the stairs. Thanks. Thanks for laughing. All in all, I was in his basement for about 45 minutes. You don't really get the feel of that because I had to cut some of that, but 45 minutes in this guy's basement, and he didn't kill me. But at any point, I thought, I've really got to be, just in case. I don't know, I do watch too much TV. Because I really could. I just kept thinking about how he could probably kill me, but he didn't, and he's super cute. Obviously, he wasn't going to hurt me, but that was my story, and I got back in the car, and I couldn't believe it that I had this thrill that I'd survived it. This next piece is, this is my last one. This was a piece that was part of an installation that I did about, again, Texas poets write about the weather. We have tornadoes here. So this is my poem, my kind of ode to the tornado. It's called The Phenomenon of the Vortex. Compared to its size, a vortex can transport energy over considerable distances, and its power is often underestimated. I knew the feeling. I was the only girl on the baseball team for years. Before I even reached the plate, the outfield crowded in, certain I was a swing and a miss at best. Coach gave me the sign. Digging my toe deep into red dirt, I laid down the perfect bunt. The path of a coyote across the desert can be marked by a succession of small dust devils. I ran like the wind. But I'm older now. I know that centripetal force is an inward force, that a dust devil is only a minor whirlwind, that the plural of vortex is vortexes and vortices, and that there are others. Hurricanes, neutercanes, tornadoes, whirlpools, waterspouts, cyclones, mesocyclones, drain whirlpools, smoke rings, bubble rings, sunspots, sand pillars, Martian dust devils, steam devils, coal devils, fire devils, leaf devils, snow devils, land spouts, gust nados, mountain nados, and eddies, just to name a few. I know that friction causes loss. The axis of a tornado is imaginary. I swirled an olive jar full of water, dish soap, and rainbow glitter as rubbish and beheld my own phenomenon.